The air in our house had been thick with tension for weeks. It started subtly, the heavy sighs, the lingering glances of dissatisfaction, and the occasional passive-aggressive comments. I ignored them at first, brushing them off as part of the stress that came with my high-pressure job. But when my husband, Ryan, dropped the bombshell, I realized this was more than just silent resentment. It was entitlement. Ryan had been unemployed for nearly a year. At first, I was sympathetic. The job market was tough, and I knew how demoralizing it could be to face rejection after rejection. I encouraged him, supported him, and even reassured him that we were fine financially. After all, I had a well-paying job, and love was about supporting each other through thick and thin. So, I offered him a monthly allowance of $5,000, more than enough to cover his personal expenses, hobbies, and outings while he figured things out. But that wasn't enough for him. One evening, as we sat down for dinner, he nonchalantly mentioned that he wanted to buy a new sports bike, one of those high-end models that cost a small fortune. I laughed, thinking it was a joke. But Ryan's face remained serious. He wanted me to give him $20,000 to buy it outright. I blinked in disbelief. "You can't be serious," I said, setting my fork down. He scoffed. "What do you mean? You make six figures. It's not like you can't afford it." I felt a pang of anger rise in my chest. "Ryan, I've been giving you $5,000 a month while you're unemployed. And you're asking me for 20 grand for a bike." His jaw clenched. "It's not just a bike. It's something I've wanted for years. Why are you acting like I'm asking for a yacht?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Was this the man I married? The same man who once dreamed of building a business and working hard for his own success? Where was the ambition, the drive, the self-respect? I had been patient, kind, and more than generous, but this was absurd. And when I refused, things took a turn I never expected. Ryan's reaction to my refusal was immediate and explosive. His face twisted with frustration, his lips pressing into a thin line before he threw his napkin onto the table. "So that's it?" he snapped. "You're just going to say no without even considering how much this means to me?" I exhaled slowly, trying to keep my voice level. "Ryan, I did consider it. And my answer is still no. I'm already supporting you. I don't understand why you think I should be responsible for funding your luxuries." He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "It's not about the money, it's about respect. You're treating me like a child who gets an allowance. I should be able to have things I want without having to grovel for them." I swallowed the bitter taste rising in my throat. "Respect? Ryan, I am respecting you by helping you while you get back on your feet. But there's a difference between support and blind indulgence." That night, the tension in our home solidified into something more tangible: resentment. The next day, I met up with my best friend, Lauren, for coffee. As soon as I told her about Ryan's demand, she nearly choked on her latte. "He asked you for $20,000 while he's sitting at home unemployed," she exclaimed. I sighed. "I know. I don't even mind helping him, but this is just beyond unreasonable." Lauren shook her head. "It's not even about the money at this point. It's about the fact that he's acting like he's entitled to it. Has he even tried to get a job?" I hesitated. "He says he has, but I haven't seen much effort. I don't want to nag him, but it's been almost a year." Lauren gave me a pointed look. "You're not nagging. You're being realistic. You're carrying all the weight in this marriage while he's acting like a spoiled teenager. That's not fair to you." I nodded, stirring my coffee absently. Deep down, I knew she was right. When I got home that evening, Ryan was in the living room, scrolling on his phone. He barely acknowledged me when I walked in. "Hey," I said cautiously. "Did you eat?" He shrugged. "Not hungry." I set my bag down, feeling the ice-cold atmosphere between us. "Ryan, we need to talk about this. I don't want us to be like this, fighting over money." His eyes flicked up to mine, sharp with irritation. "It's easy for you to say that when you're the one holding all the money." I felt a sting of frustration. "Ryan, this isn't about me lording money over you. This is about the fact that you're prioritizing a sports bike over our actual life together. What if something unexpected happens? What if we need that money for something important?" He scoffed. "So now I'm irresponsible? Wow! Just say you think I'm useless and get it over with." I rubbed my temples, exhausted. That's not what I'm saying. But I need you to understand that I can't be the only responsible one in this relationship. Feeling lost, I decided to talk to Ryan's mother, Diane, a few days later. She had always been supportive of our marriage, and I hoped she could give me some insight. When I told her what was going on, she sighed heavily. "Oh, honey," she said, shaking her head. "I was afraid of this." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She took a sip of her tea before answering. "Ryan has always struggled with taking accountability. When he was younger, if things didn't go his way, he'd blame everyone else. His father and I tried to push him to be independent, but sometimes I think we let him slide too much." My stomach sank. "So this isn't new?" She gave me a sad smile. "I love my son, but he has a habit of taking advantage of people's kindness. And you, sweetheart, are too kind." I felt a lump in my throat. "I don't know what to do, Diane. I don't want to give up on him, but I also can't keep being the only one trying." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "You shouldn't be the only one trying. And maybe it's time Ryan learned that." The tension between Ryan and me continued to grow over the next few weeks. He refused to talk about finding a job, ignored my efforts to communicate, and acted distant whenever I tried to bring up our future. Then, one day, I checked our joint bank account and nearly had a heart attack. Ryan had withdrawn $15,000. Panicked, I called him. He answered on the third ring. "Hey," he said, sounding way too casual. "Ryan, where's the money?" I demanded. There was a pause. Then, in a hesitant voice, he said, I put a down payment on the bike." The room spun around me. "Are you kidding me? You stole from me to buy that damn bike." "It's not stealing," he snapped. "It's our money. I have a right to use it too." I gripped the phone tightly, my heart pounding. "You don't have a job, Ryan. That money was for us, not for you to go on some joyride while I work to keep us afloat." "Well, maybe if you actually supported me instead of treating me like a child." I hung up. My hands were shaking. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about trust. And Ryan had just shattered it. And in that moment, I knew something had to change. Or I would. The moment I hung up, my mind spun with anger, hurt, and betrayal. I had given Ryan the benefit of the doubt for months, hoping he would find his footing, but this was beyond irresponsible. It was outright deceitful. He had taken my hard-earned money without my consent and used it for a luxury purchase while I was the only one keeping our household afloat. I sat on the couch, staring at my phone, waiting for him to call back. He didn't. Instead, an hour later, I heard the roar of a motorcycle engine outside. My stomach twisted. He actually bought it. I rushed to the window and watched as Ryan parked a gleaming black sports bike in our driveway. He removed his helmet, grinning like a child on Christmas morning. My hands clenched into fists. He walked inside, looking completely unbothered, even smug. "What do you think?" he asked, gesturing toward the bike as if expecting praise. I stared at him in disbelief. "Are you serious, Ryan? You went behind my back and stole our money to buy this? Do you even hear yourself?" His grin faltered. "It wasn't stealing. I just withdrew some of our savings. You act like I drained the whole account." I let out a humorless laugh. $15,000, Ryan. That's not some of our savings. That's money we might have needed for an emergency. Or rent. Or literally anything more important than a bike. His jaw tightened. "You don't get it. I needed this. I needed something for me. Do you know what it feels like to be stuck at home, feeling useless while your wife plays the role of the breadwinner?" I threw my hands up. "Then do something about it, Ryan. Get a job. Any job. I have been supporting you, giving you time to figure things out, and this is how you repay me." He scoffed. "So now you're acting like I'm some lazy bum who doesn't contribute anything?" I crossed my arms. "Tell me, Ryan, what exactly have you contributed? Because all I see is you draining our savings, refusing to take responsibility, and treating me like an ATM instead of your wife." His expression darkened. "That's unfair." "No, what's unfair is me working my ass off while you sit around doing nothing, then taking my money behind my back." We stood there in tense silence, the weight of my words settling between us. I could see something flicker in his eyes, guilt, maybe? But if it was there, it disappeared as quickly as it came. That night, Ryan slept in the guest room. Not that I cared. I was too angry to even look at him. The next morning, he tried to act like nothing had happened, but I wasn't playing along. I left for work without saying a word. Later that evening, when I got home, the house was eerily quiet. I found Ryan sitting on the couch, staring at his phone. He barely looked up as I walked in. "Hey," he muttered. I ignored him and went straight to the bedroom. Moments later, he followed. "So, is this how it's going to be?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. I didn't bother turning around. "How it's going to be? You giving me the silent treatment like a child." I exhaled sharply, turning to face him. "Ryan, I'm done pretending everything is okay. You stole from me. You betrayed my trust. And instead of apologizing, you're acting like I'm the problem." He ran a hand through his hair. "I get it, okay? I messed up. But he paused, looking frustrated. "I just wanted something for myself. Something that made me feel good again." I studied him for a moment. "And you thought taking money without my consent was the way to do that?" His gaze dropped. "I didn't think you'd react this badly." I let out a bitter laugh. "Then you don't know me at all." A heavy silence stretched between us before he muttered, "So what now?" I looked at him, feeling exhaustion settle into my bones. "That's up to you, Ryan. But I'm not going to keep supporting someone who doesn't respect me." I needed clarity, so I called Diane again. "You have to put your foot down," she said firmly. "This isn't just a one-time mistake, honey. It's a pattern. If he thinks he can get away with this, he'll keep pushing the boundaries. But what if he finally realizes he's wrong?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. Diane sighed. "You can't fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed. And from what I'm hearing, Ryan doesn't think he's done anything wrong. That's the real problem." I hung up, staring at the ceiling, wondering when my marriage had turned into something so unrecognizable. That night, I sat Ryan down. "We need to talk." He sighed. "Here we go again." I ignored the attitude. "This isn't working. And it won't work unless something changes. You need to get a job. You need to take responsibility for your life. And you need to understand that I'm your wife, not your bank." His jaw tightened. "And if I don't?" I swallowed hard. "Then I don't think I can do this anymore." A flicker of panic crossed his face. "Are you saying you'd leave me?" "I'm saying I can't keep living like this. I love you, Ryan, but love isn't enough. I need a partner, not a dependent." His expression wavered between anger and disbelief. "You'd throw everything away over money?" "No," I said softly. "I'd walk away because of what this money situation represents. Your refusal to take responsibility, your entitlement, your disregard for what I do for us." He was silent for a long time before muttering, "Fine. I'll figure something out." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But deep down, something told me this wasn't over. And I was right. A week later, I came home to find Ryan and his friends in the garage, laughing as they admired his new bike. My stomach churned. He was acting like nothing had happened. Like my ultimatum had meant nothing. That night, as we lay in bed, I whispered, "You don't take me seriously, do you?" He rolled over, looking at me lazily. "Babe, you're overreacting." That was it. That was the moment I knew. I got out of bed and stood by the door. "Then let me show you just how serious I am." And with that, I walked away this time, for good. The moment I stepped out of that bedroom, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just walking away from a fight, I was walking away from a version of myself that had tolerated too much for too long. Ryan's arrogance, his entitlement, his complete disregard for my sacrifices, I had excused them for months, believing things would get better. But now I knew better. I went to the living room and grabbed my purse, my hands trembling, but not with fear. With finality. As I reached for my keys, Ryan appeared in the doorway, his expression changing from smug amusement to concern. "Where are you going?" His voice had an edge of panic. I turned, meeting his gaze with unwavering determination. "Away from here. Away from this." His brows furrowed. "Come on, don't be dramatic. It's just an argument." I let out a bitter laugh. No, Ryan. This is years of neglect, selfishness, and disrespect coming to a head. This isn't just about money. This is about trust, about partnership, about everything a marriage is supposed to be. And you threw it away the moment you chose that bike over us. His jaw tightened, his pride rearing its ugly head. So, what? You're leaving me because I wanted something for myself. I shook my head. I'm leaving because you take and never give back. Because you refuse to take responsibility for your life. Because I deserve better than a husband who sees me as an ATM instead of a partner. He took a step forward, his eyes pleading now. Wait, let's just talk about this. I exhaled sharply. We've talked, Ryan. And every time you dismissed me, belittled my concerns, and made me feel like I was crazy for wanting a real partner. But I'm not crazy. I'm done. His face fell. For the first time, I saw fear. Real fear. You don't mean that, he whispered. I held my ground. I do. He ran a frustrated hand through his hair, pacing. Okay. I'll return the bike. I'll find a job. I'll fix this. I studied him carefully. Are you saying that because you mean it, or because you're afraid of losing your cushy setup? His lips parted, but no words came. That was all the answer I needed. I turned and opened the front door. I'll send someone to pick up my things, I said over my shoulder. Panic overtook his features. Wait, don't go. I love you. I closed my eyes for a moment, swallowing back the sting of heartbreak. Then I turned to him one last time. Love isn't enough, Ryan. If it was, we wouldn't be here. And with that, I walked out. As I drove away, my phone buzzed with text after text from Ryan. Apologies, promises, please. But I didn't respond. Because for the first time in a long time, I was choosing me. And it felt liberating. The drive away from our home, the place I had built, funded, and nurtured while Ryan simply existed within it, felt surreal. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, my heart pounding, but not with regret. With clarity. I had spent so long convincing myself that if I just held on a little longer, things would change. That if I gave Ryan more time, more patience, more love, he would step up. But he never had. And he never would. I pulled into Lauren's driveway, my best friend already waiting at the door as if she had sensed this moment was coming long before I did. The second I stepped out of the car, she opened her arms, and for the first time in months, I let myself break. I left him, I whispered, my voice trembling. She hugged me tightly. Good. You deserve so much better. I wasn't ready to respond. My body still held the echoes of old hopes, the ghosts of a love I had once believed in. But deep down, I knew she was right. Over the next few days, Ryan bombarded my phone with messages. At first, it was anger. So you're really just going to walk away? Just like that? Then came guilt tripping. You're giving up on us. I can't believe you're this cold. Then, bargaining. I'll return the bike. I'll do better. Please, let's fix this. And finally, silence. It was the silence that nearly broke me. For years, my life had revolved around Ryan's needs, his moods, his problems. But now? Now there was just space. And in that space, I began to rebuild. At first, I didn't know what to do with my newfound freedom. I had spent so long bending over backward to make things work that I had forgotten what it felt like to simply exist for myself. I threw myself into work, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I went to dinners with friends without worrying about coming home to a sulking husband. I picked up hobbies I had abandoned, started working out again, even redecorated my new apartment exactly how I wanted. And slowly, the weight that had been pressing on my chest for months, maybe years, began to lift. A few weeks later, Ryan reached out. Not with anger or desperation this time, but with something resembling acceptance. I get it now. I took you for granted. And I'm sorry. I stared at the message for a long time. Not because I was tempted to respond, but because I realized how little his words affected me now. There was a time when those words would have been enough to pull me back in. When the hope of change would have outweighed the reality of our past. But not anymore. I didn't need an apology. I needed action, and Ryan had shown me who he was, over and over again. So I took a deep breath, deleted the message, and moved forward. Walking away from Ryan wasn't just about ending a relationship. It was about choosing myself. About understanding that love isn't supposed to feel like sacrifice. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Because I had finally learned that the right love, the real kind, isn't something you have to beg for. And that was worth more than any amount of money. Sitting in my new apartment one evening, I watched the city lights flicker outside my window. The silence that once felt daunting now felt peaceful. I no longer carried the burden of someone else's irresponsibility. I no longer had to justify my needs or fight for basic respect. I was free. There were moments when doubt crept in, fleeting whispers of did I do the right thing? But every time, I reminded myself of the truth. I had given Ryan every chance to grow, to meet me halfway, to be a partner rather than a dependent. And every time, he had chosen complacency over effort, entitlement over gratitude. I had once feared that walking away would leave me feeling empty, but in reality, it had done the opposite. I felt full. Full of clarity, of purpose, of self-respect that had been buried under years of trying to fix someone who didn't want to be fixed. One evening, as I scrolled through my phone, I noticed a text from an unknown number. "I hope you're doing well. I've been thinking a lot about everything. I just wanted to say I understand now, and I wish I had seen it sooner." I stared at the message for a long time before locking my phone and setting it aside. I didn't need closure from Ryan. I had already given that to myself. Standing by my window, a quiet smile touched my lips. This wasn't the ending I had once imagined for myself, but maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something even better. Because love should never feel like a burden. And the best thing I had ever done was finally choosing to love myself first.